With the presidential campaign in full swing now that we're in September, both candidates are promising that their policies will help accelerate the American dream, helping to accelerate upward mobility. We have a fascinating column in today's Wall Street Journal from economics editor David Wessel, who's going to be joining us from Washington, D.C., explaining that the American dream, he writes, the American dream is a conversation about economic mobility often blurs myth and reality. So here to tell us why that is David Wessel in D.C. David, explain a little bit why conversations about upward mobility blur reality and myth.
Well, America has always been a country where it's important to our national psyche to believe that anybody can go from poverty to wealth. It's the Ben Franklin, Horatio Alger story. I loved Bill Clinton's line. He attributed it to someone else in his speech at the Democratic Convention, where he says that every politician wants you to believe that he was born in a log cabin that he built himself. But what I look at, I look at one really small piece, but a really interesting piece of this question in my column today's paper, which is simply this. A surprisingly large number of black kids who grow up in families that are middle class fall out of the middle class as adults. Many more kids who are born to middle class parents or parents with middle class income who are black fall down the income ladder than white. And I think I was shocked when I heard that this is kind of a finding now conventional wisdom among social scientists. In my mind, the problem was getting to the middle class. Once you got to the middle class, you had an income of whatever it is, $70,000 that puts you in the middle of the middle class. I figured that your kids would have a pretty good shot of staying there. But apparently, given the available data, that's not true. And it's a real puzzle why it is so much harder for black kids to stay in the middle class if they're born to middle class parents than white kids.
And we've had for many years the American dream in quotation marks, if you will. What will the current economic downturn, what will the impact of that be on these findings that you write about?
Well, nothing good, of course. There are two different things going on, and it's hard sometimes to separate them. One is what's happening to the overall rate of growth, the overall median income. We saw recently the Census Bureau just a couple of days ago said that the median income, that is the income of the average family, the one in the middle of the middle class, has been falling for some time. And it's not nearly where it was before the recession. So a recession makes that worse. But the other thing is how are the goods and services and incomes distributed throughout the economy. And we know that the gap between winners and losers in our economy has been widening. Now, that doesn't seem so bad if the escalators of income mobility are working better and better. But we've had this thing where the gap is widening and the escalators aren't moving any faster. So it's simply, there's a Brookings report out today which says that America's still a country where people can move above their parent station in life, but it helps to be white, and it helps to have higher educated parents, and it hurts to be black or to be born to a lower income family.
And you write in the story as well that it not only hurts to be born black or in a lower income, but to be born a black man.
Right. So some of the research doesn't distinguish between men and women, and some does. And there's really interesting work that shows that life in adulthood seems to be harder for black men born into the middle class than for black women. Some of it is things we don't understand. Some of it is choices that they make, and that's one of the things that researchers are emphasizing. Black men are less likely to go to college than black women, and black men are much less likely than white men to be married in adulthood. And we know that both those things help you increase your income and do better than your parents. And so there are some things that we understand, behavior choices that black men make that are hurting them in the economic race, and some things, a lot of things we don't really understand, and we're just going to have to do more research and more thinking. But it strikes me that this is a conversation you never hear in the political debate this year. No one is talking about race. We see a lot of talk about Hispanics. Perhaps it's because we have a black president and it's hard for him to talk about race. Perhaps it's because other things are crowding out that discussion. But I think it's worth remembering that for a lot of black men, being born to a middle class parents is not a guarantee of growing up to be a middle class adult.